Hello and welcome back to Two Pupils in a Pod. Today, on By Hook or By Book, Students and Mental Health, we will be focusing on the importance of mental health among adolescent students and the role of schools in this.
That's right. Tomorrow, which is the 10th of October, is celebrated as the World Mental Health Day. So we thought it's only fitting to talk about mental health, but of course, in the context of students.
Now, have you noticed how anytime you ask someone how they are, and they always reply in terms of their physical well being?
Right,
I think that just goes to show how little importance we give to our mental health.
exactly. But as the World Health Organization famously says, there is no health without mental health. We often forget that mental health is just as important as physical health, if not more.
Yes, that is so true. So, what exactly is mental health? Now, a lot of people think that good mental health is the absence of mental disorders. But that is only partly true. Mental health is the overall state of well being of the mind. It includes our emotional, psychological, and social well being, which all affect how we think, feel, and act.
Exactly. And the consequences of not addressing mental health issues can impair both physical as well as mental health, and it limits opportunities to living a normal, healthy life.
Yeah, and mental health problems also have a direct effect on the physical health of individuals.
Exactly. So, when we talk about adolescence, adolescent mental health is so important because these conditions at that age extend to adulthood.
Yeah, and actually, it's so shocking that half of all mental health conditions start by 14 years of age. But
What?
unfortunately, yeah, but unfortunately, most cases are undetected and untreated.
That is really shocking. I think I read somewhere that an estimated 10 to 20 percentage of adolescents globally experience mental health conditions, yet these remain mostly underdiagnosed and undertreated.
That's really sad. Statistics have shown that 1 in 5 teens has a diagnosable mental health disorder, and these teenage mental disorders are on the rise. In fact, experts say that mental disorders in teenagers are at an all time high.
This is exactly the reason why today we thought of discussing the importance of mental health among our students. So, adolescence is a very crucial period for us because in this stage of life, we develop and maintain social as well as emotional habits.
Yes, so true. And this is also the period when majority of us experience a lot of negative emotion,
Yeah,
and the symptoms of these uh, emotions are taken very lightly or ignored, and the consequence of this is that it can lead to very major problems in the future, like let's say depression, for example, in
yes.
addition to lack of performance and an increased risk of substance abuse and risk taking behavior.
Exactly. So emotional disorders commonly emerge during this time in teenage years, and adolescents with emotional disorders can also experience other symptoms like excessive irritability, frustration, or general anger. And these symptoms can sometimes overlap and can cause more than one emotional disorder with rapid and unexpected changes. So this, fluctuates their mood and their emotional outbursts, etc. And younger adolescents, like preteens, for example, they may additionally develop emotion-related physical symptoms such as stomachache, headache, or even nausea.
Yes, and I think this just further elaborates the point that mental health has a direct effect on our physical health as well.
Right.
So, now that we've spoken about the importance of mental health among adolescents, let's talk about what contributes to mental health in teenagers. Now, since we are talking about teenagers who are students, I think the first place that we should start with is the school environment, because that's where most of us spend majority of our time,
Yes.
second to our home. Now, school in itself can be a major trigger for a lot of students experiencing mental health issues. Because the environment in school, the school pressure, the peer pressure, bullying and harassment, excessive workload, the pressure to perform well and achieve high grades, the
Hmm.
academic performance, and overly strict teachers. These are, the most common school factors that affect a child's mental health.
Definitely. So now let's look at the other factors in some more detail.
Yeah, now apart from just school factors and the school environment, various physical, emotional, and social changes can also make adolescents vulnerable to mental health problems.
Right.
And, generally, the more risk factors that an individual is exposed to, the greater potential impact it has on their mental health.
Exactly. So it's sort of a direct relationship. And common sources of stress in adolescence are generally social stress. For example, will I fit in? Will I stand out? Isolation, as in, why am I so lonely? Why don't I have as many friends as she has? Substance abuse, for example, should I take the drugs that my friends are taking? Emotional trauma, sexual violence, or even physical abuse. And generally, acts of violence, such as school shootings, may lead to severe stress for the students who are unfortunately a part of that incident, who are unfortunately stuck when such things are happening.
Yeah, the students who are present when such an incident takes place,
Yeah,
they suffer from a disorder called post traumatic stress disorder, which is a severe stress reaction to a traumatic event. And so, apart from this, another important factor that affects an adolescent's mental health is the quality of their home life. Now,
right.
an unstable or dysfunctional home environment, domestic violence, or harsh parenting, these have a direct influence on an individual's mind. And then, uh, if they come from a lower economic background, they will obviously face stigma, discrimination, exclusion, and just the general lack of access to, a quality life, and a lack of access to proper resources and services may also create sort of like an inferiority complex and have an impact on their mental health.
I agree. And the in the society that we live in, cultural standards or social expectations are very much um, in the sense that they value beauty connected to thinness, and
Right,
this could absolutely disturb or disrupt a person's mind into thinking that um, the thinner they are, the better society will accept them. And so this develops eating disorders, and it may lead to feelings of inadequacy, like general low self-esteem, anger, anxiety, and even loneliness. And while we're talking about um, a society that judges a lot, let's not forget the influence of media and gender norms that can furthermore increase the disparity between an adolescent's real life, with their lived reality, and their perceptions or their aspirations for the future.
very true. As teenagers, all of us spend a lot of time on social media. And
Exactly.
I mean, social media is good, for entertainment and connecting with friends, etc. there's also a really dark side to it, which either people are unaware of or they're not talking about. Because the truth is that social media can leave consequences and deep scars in the minds of the users, especially the younger population.
Yeah,
For example, watching rich, famous, successful people on social media can cause serious low self image issues, body issues, depression, anxiety, etc. And all of this, uh, you know, along with like a desire for greater autonomy
mm,
and exploring of sexual identity, just adds on to all the issues that teenagers already face, making their mental health condition very fragile.
exactly. And generally, teens who use social media can be so negatively affected, and their emotional stability can be severely harmed because the dark side of social media always has toxic comparisons, cyberbullying, less face to face interactions, and in this way, someone's reputation or self worth can be destroyed in minutes and they can face the consequence for years. So it's really unfortunate that us as teens, we can't deny it that social media doesn't affect us. It definitely does.
Definitely, definitely, very true. So basically, what happens to an individual in their teenage years will definitely have an impact on their adult life and just overall their future life.
Exactly.
Now that we know what are the factors that influence or have an impact on an adolescent's mental health, let's now talk about some of the common mental health problems among students and teenagers. Now, before we talk about the different mental health problems, let's make it clear what mental health is not. Um, I'm pretty sure that a lot of us have either said it ourselves or heard, our friends say, "Hey, I'm feeling so depressed today," or someone who likes being organized can be called as having OCD. And
Yeah.
the thing is that we don't realize the severity of these terms, and we so casually use them in conversations. And I mean, it's not our fault exactly, because these topics are not given enough, they're not acknowledged enough, and people don't know the gravity of these problems. So mental health is not temporary feelings of sadness or mood swings, etc.
Yes.
Mental illness involves behavioral and mood changes that are far more extreme than average.
So, the
Right.
most common mental health related difficulties in school age children that we all know about are, say, clinical depression, generalized anxiety disorder, emotional disorders, eating disorders, substance abuse, childhood behavioral disorders, and so on. However, there are these specific mental health disorders that Sakina would like to explain. As she's a psychology student, I'm pretty sure she has learned about them and she'll be able to further elaborate.
Yes, okay. So, as Fatima pointed out, these are not just the more general ones, but also common ones. But apart from these, there are also other mental health problems and disorders. For example, psychosis. Now, that is a mental disorder in which the individual is disconnected from reality. Then there are social phobias, also known as social anxiety, in which the individual fears being watched and judged by others during social interactions or in a social situation or setting.
Yes.
Then there are disruptive behaviors in which children. This is usually among uh, the younger kids, where they're being stubborn, difficult, disobedient, irritable, etc. Then, like I previously mentioned, post traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. It is a severe stress reaction to a traumatic event, and the individual feels excessive anxiety, experiences flashbacks, nightmares, that sort of a thing. Then there is something known as borderline personality disorder, which basically relates to self image issues, difficulty in managing and controlling your emotions and behavior,
Hmm.
and just a general pattern of unstable relationships. And lastly, I think there's schizophrenia, in which, again, people interpret reality abnormally and experience delusions and hallucinations. So, these conditions are not as common, and they're definitely more classified, but um, a lot of adolescents and teenagers are a victim of these very serious conditions and disorders.
Yes, exactly. So now that we've talked about the different mental health disorders in detail, let's also address the effects and the repercussions that they can have on an individual. So, education professionals have generally recognized the fact that a student's mental health directly has an impact on their learning and their achievement, and this results in low educational attainment.
Yes. Um, there are dire consequences of mental health on the student, which often manifest as problems that continually plague schools. This mental health problems, they result in prolonged student absences, underachievement, constant disruptions and acting out, and worst case scenario, dropouts. So these things, along with attention deficits, restlessness, cognitive disturbances, lack of motivation, being easily distracted, and having trouble remembering and retaining information, they all
Hmm.
adversely affect the scholastic development of the individual and the school overall.
And it generally leads to poor interpersonal skills, like having difficulty in interacting with another person, initiating conversations with their friends, and even asking teachers questions.
Right, right. In fact, it may even lead to the student being skeptical towards um, understanding like a different perspective and often interpreting it as criticism. So
Yeah.
the individual is generally very protective and defensive of his thoughts and does not openly welcome opinions from a third party, be it another classmate or teacher, etc.
Exactly. And this is pretty common actually. And apart from the impact on their scholastic and academic performance, bad mental health also poses a greater threat to the individual himself in terms of self harm, substance
Yes.
abuse, and general risk taking behavior, which sometimes unfortunately translates to taking their own life.
Yes, and it's really, really sad. And,
Yeah.
since you talked about risk taking behavior, sometimes these things can also endanger the lives of those around the individual, let's say during episodes of emotional outbursts or acting out, like school shootings in some cases.
Yeah.
These acts of violence and danger may result in juvenile crimes, which is honestly terrible because these are people in need of help, and this is the only option they have, of maybe like it's a call for help, a cry for help. So it's a really sad situation for adolescents.
Now, this is exactly why today we are here to spread more awareness about mental health and why it has to start at schools. Now, schools are a safe haven for so many students. It's like a second home. And our youth spends more time in school than they do anywhere else except their own home. So, because children spend so much of their daily time at school, mental health education logically should begin at school, which is the basic level.
Yes, true. See, because right now there is a lot of stigma around the topic of mental health in our society.
Yes,
So, a cultural shift in attitudes about mental health needs to start with the young. And the only way they are going to understand more about mental health and stop stigmatizing is if they receive the necessary education. So, this breaking down of stigma and misconceptions about mental illnesses has to start in schools. The conversation about mental health problems needs to be initiated at the school level, when they're still young, so that it spreads not only in the society around, but also when they themselves grow up as individuals and become adults.
exactly. And it was noticed that teaching high school students about mental health generally improved their attitudes towards treatment, and it led to a boost in their willingness to seek help from a counselor, and their overall mental health literacy was increased.
See, I mean, that's just evidence of the positive impact of starting mental health education in schools itself. And also,
Yeah,
schools are the building blocks of an individual's personality. It's where friendships begin, it's where teens hone their sense of self worth, and it's also the place where children need to learn that their behavior, their actions towards others can cause serious self worth issues.
exactly. And we think that mental health education should be a part of the curriculum because, as discussed earlier, many mental health issues generally begin during the school years.
Exactly. Students experience conflicts, bullying, social exclusion, harassment, etc. And all of this is within the school environment. All of these challenges that students face, it's within the school environment. So I think it's only right that they're even educated about these issues at school.
Exactly. In fact, I feel like it's long overdue. Most schools today teach physical health, nutrition, sex education. So I really think that there's a gap when it comes to mental health.
True.
And so, just as physical education is a part of curriculum in schools, mental health awareness and education about different types of mental health disorders should be a part of it too. We need to empower students with knowledge about mental health illness so that they are better informed.
Absolutely. Without proper education, students won't know how to recognize the problem that they're experiencing, or be
Right.
encouraged to open up about it, look for help, or help their own friends, their peers, their classmates who are experiencing or going through similar or other mental health problems. So like you rightly said, there is this gap, and that needs to be closed, and children need to have a chance of dealing with mental health problems just like they're taught to deal with any other problem.
Exactly. And so, there is a pressing need for a solid plan that would involve authorities and community figures related to our students. So, for example, it would start with their family and then proceed to teachers. So, social workers, counselors, special education teachers, school nurses, and even the principals can get involved too.
Yes, and I think in this whole thing a teacher will have to play like the most central role,
I agree.
because during the normal school week, teachers spend more time with the students than the students do with their own families. Especially if the parents are working, there is very less interaction between the family and the child. But definitely, a teacher um, is first in line of defense for their students. So, educators and teachers need to be at the heart of this whole initiative and conversation around mental health.
That's so true. It's like theoretically, teachers can spot anything troubling their students because they spend so much time with them, as you rightly said. And so, we really think that school is one of the best places for both educators and students to become increasingly aware of mental health problems, and mental health disorders. So, this will lead to a more informed society.
Definitely, definitely. Now, in recent times, a growing number of schools have begun to realize the importance of mental health education, and they are working to, create an environment where mental health issues are recognized and support is offered.
Yes, I agree. I've read about so many programs and interventions that have been in place in different countries. So, school employed mental health professionals like counselors and other individuals work with teachers to provide support and with parents to better understand students' needs and implement appropriate support in the form of open communications.
Yes, but unfortunately, these programs and interventions have had very little to no success at all. And it's because of a bunch of various reasons, like unclear and unfocused objectives, or an absence of clear guidelines for implementation,
Yes,
lack of enough resources and instruction manuals, insufficient instruction and training of those in positions of responsibility for undertaking the programs, and just a general lack in implementation and quality control. So, even though so many countries have started these initiatives for mental health education, they haven't been as successful as they should have.
exactly. And another reason could be the fact that specialist healthcare is not sufficiently accessible. So many people do not have the access to such resources. And generally, also, there's a fear of having a mental health disorder and being stigmatized for
Right,
it.
right.
Because, as we discussed earlier, the society, it tends to judge a lot. And apart from that, there's also this uncertainty among children and parents about whether the behavioral changes actually require treatment or not.
Oh,
And there's
yes.
little to no awareness about the available healthcare services. And generally, when we talk about families from a migration background, there exist certain language barriers or even cultural obstacles which prevent these parents and children from approaching help.
True, true. So, all of these problems and issues call for better, more achievable solutions.
Right.
Just like with any other disease or health problem, early interventions are important in mental health as well. If the mental illness is in its early stages, there's a chance of stopping it from being fully blown. So, I think the first step is to mandate mental health education in school, because still in a lot of countries, in a lot of schools, mental health education is not mandatory. So, until it is, teachers and administrators need to help shine the light on the concept of self care. And they need to emphasize the fact that mental health is an integral part of health.
I definitely agree with that. And teachers often are not given enough training to recognize mental health issues. But teachers can instead try different tactics in their ways of teaching as well. A teacher's emotionally supportive approach, a more committed outlook, and a responsible attitude towards their student results in less disruptive behavior and fewer disorders in the student themselves.
Definitely, definitely. In fact, not just the teacher, everyone involved in a typical school day needs to be on board. The the whole mental health thing and help those having trouble with their mental health.
Exactly. So, teachers, school counselors, school psychologists, and fellow students need to be given basic training about how to detect the early signs of mental health issues, spotting the meaningful changes in behavior, acting at the first sign of a potential mental health problem, and so on. So, these could be done via workshops and different sessions, and even specialists can come and talk about these issues in school.
Yes. You know what students need is for someone to push them in the right direction and help them start a
Exactly.
journey of therapy and healing. So, schools need to adopt the policy of advocating mental health awareness and encourage students to speak up about their problems.
Exactly. We need to be working towards a school environment where students are able to recognize when they're dealing with mental health issues, and they feel that they can ask for help without being judged or without being stigmatized about it.
Yes, yes, definitely. So, schools need to foster an environment where mental health issues can be identified and addressed without, like you rightly said, being stigmatized or judged. And awareness should be raised about mental health crises such as self harm, substance abuse, eating disorders, and other negative coping behavior. That a teenager usually resorts to deal with their mental health problems.
Exactly. And knowledge is wealth. And if everyone in schools is empowered with knowledge, then only dialogue will be encouraged. And students eventually will have the freedom to open up about what they are struggling and what they are actually going through. This will definitely allow them to get the support that they need before it's too late.
Yes, and so learning about mental health illnesses will have a positive impact on the students, because firstly they'll learn about therapy and how to treat their problem.
Yeah,
Then they'll be more willing to talk about their problems. And I think most importantly, they'll be able to acknowledge that they have a problem.
exactly. And it's very much essential to learn about these things. And apart from that, open lines of communication between home and school should exist. And we had discussed this earlier. So, this would, help parents to be able to share their concerns about their children and collaborate with teachers to address them, and vice versa.
Definitely. So, everyone in the immediate environment of the child, of the teenager, has to be a part of this, and only then will this whole thing be successful. So, this includes, their peers, their friends, their family, their teachers, everyone. And that's why, early childhood intervention programs like providing a stable environment that is sensitive to children's health and nutritional needs, an environment that will protect them from threats, uh, opportunities for learning, uh, interactions, emotional support. All of these will greatly help uh, towards building a positive mental health.
Yeah,
And of course, support to children in the form of life skill programs, child and youth development programs, and mental health promotional activities in school will also create like an ecological change in school, and therefore change the whole landscape about mental health.
definitely. And um, since we had addressed a big problem, which was social media, this new kind of threat has definitely has its own effect on the younger generation, and schools need to raise the bar in mental health awareness and ensure that their students are learning about self-love, system of values, loving everyone, not judging people, talking about their insecurities openly, and sharing their problems in general. So this could be done via sessions held in school, simple self-care activities, and these exercises in their own classroom where the student will see that they're in the loving environment that they are in, and this could help them be more open about their struggles.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
this would eventually, exactly, and this would eventually be beneficial for the proper development of an individual student, and it would prevent them to feel demoralized or even depressed.
True, true. So I think what we need now is for more basic approaches to mental health instead of, very classified programs and all. Because this,
Exactly.
the basics where everyone first learns about what mental health is, to firstly just create that awareness and bring the topic of mental health into conversation. That is the first step we need to take before we start with intervention programs and bringing psychiatrists and psychologists into the picture. We first have to
Absolutely.
create awareness and then
Hmm.
educate them. So the next step will be to include mental health in the school curriculum because of all the reasons that we've just mentioned. And why school is because school is, like we said, the place where we spend most of our time. And
Hmm.
apart from all the other things that we are learning, why not also learn about mental health? So
Exactly.
with this, we've come to the end of today's episode on mental health among students. We do hope we've highlighted the importance of awareness about mental health and the severity of mental health conditions starting from a young age. We also sincerely hope that starting today, you will actively look after your mental health and that of those around you.
Exactly. I absolutely agree. And one thing that we all must remember is that since mental health issues don't have very obvious symptoms as physical health problems, it may not always be easy to know what another person is going through. So remember to always be kind to yourself and to others. It really goes a long way.
Definitely, definitely. So stay safe, stay healthy, both physically and mentally.
Yes.
Signing off, we are your hosts, Sakina and Fatima.